Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Best Ranger podcast. We are continuing to preview, relive, and just pump up not only the Best Ranger competition, but the Ranger community as a whole. And I am super excited for today's guest. He's got a great story and one that I think we can all learn a ton from in terms of perseverance, getting back in the fight, and finishing off a big goal that you set for yourself. So, Sergeant First Class Nick Whitney is here with me today. Nick, how's it going?
Going good, Vince.
Good, good, man. If for those of you that don't know, Nick joins us from Alaska. So if at any point we get a little bit of a weird connection, we'll blame it on the remote internet service going on up there.
It's perfect.
Yeah. So Nick, tell us a little about yourself. When did you join the army initially?
So I joined right out of high school. So I graduated high school at 17 years old in 2011 in June. Turned 18 that July, and then I was in basic training that August. One station unit training like everybody else. Went to airborne school right after that, and then following that, I was at 4th Brigade, 82nd. I was there for a couple months, and then I was actually like at my first deployment. I turned 19 like halfway through my first deployment.
Whoa. Wow, talk about growing up quick. You know, when I was
And
in
it's definitely. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, man.
It's just weird. Like it's a weird perspective when like a lot of people join the military now. It's just like, hey, one day go to the motor pool, kick some Humvee tires, and then it's kind of like a lackadaisical schedule versus like, hey, we have Kiowas, we have A-10 Warthogs, like everything's just lighting up everything. I'm like, oh, this is the army. This is my first perspective of everything, and it was kind of blowing me away.
Yeah, that is. I mean, it's a lot of growing up to do very quickly. You know, I think a lot of the guys we see coming into the force now, they like yearn for that experience, but they also don't know how good they have it that they can go to the motor pool on Monday and then, you know, they're home Monday night for dinner and they're not taking, you know, long pumps back to back overseas right away when they're joining. They're getting some time to actually hone and learn their craft early on in their careers, which I think is super valuable for a lot of us right now. Yeah.
I
What
absolutely agree. Because that was kind of there's definitely a delay between us. Just a heads up, I can kind of tell right now. I
Yeah,
don't
no
know if you've
worries.
been noticing that.
No worries. I'll just pause a little bit longer between questions and you know let you go a little bit more. When so you join the army, you go through I think a few deployments first. What kind of dialed you into going to Ranger School? What kind of drove you that way? And when did you go?
So I think with the military, if you're in the infantry community, they're going to ask you to do three things. They're going to ask you to get your EIB. They're going to go ask you to go to Ranger School, and then probably like Audie Murphy board would be like the last thing that's like NCO where it's like, hey, these need to be the three things you need to strive to do. If you're in the airborne community, obviously jump master as well. Um, and it's kind of like constantly driven on you, like, hey, you need to go to Ranger School. And I think for a lot of people, especially enlisted, it's like it's that monkey on their back. I don't want to be one of those guys that always had like excuses. So it kind of came a time, it was like probably 6 or 7 years into my career, like, hey, I like need to go and get this done with. So I mean, I joined in 2011, had two deployments, the 82nd. As soon as I got to JBLM, I was like, it'd probably be very valuable to actually like go out and get my Ranger tab. So I had spent like probably about 3 months prior to that, where it's like, hey, I really need to lock in my running, get good on the RTTs back when RTTs was droppable, practice a little bit of land nav, like get really prepped for this and at least give it a try to see like, hey, like I tried it and I failed versus never actually going. And I eventually ended up going in 2019, just a few months after I got to JBLM. Honestly, we kind of put it on this huge pedestal where it's like everybody kind of talks about the huge horror stories with it. I'm sure you kind of went through the same thing. You hear all these crazy horror stories, and you get there, and it's like, honestly, this isn't as bad as I thought it'd be. I was fortunate that I went 62 and through. Biggest thing that I was kind of like accredited myself for was like the peer scores because I think it was at Darby I was 94% on peers, Mullins was 100% on peers, and then Florida was 86% on peers. I was kind of something where it's like, hey, like I was always like there for the homies. I wasn't really like chasing the grades or anything. Obviously, the grades panned out the way they did, but I personally enjoyed my Ranger School experience.
Yeah, I hope the Army never goes away from, actively peer pressuring people to go to Ranger School. I think, so often more and more I hear guys talk about it as like this option or, uh, kind of like you're saying, almost they're too scared to go try, and because they're too scared to go try, they've never even experienced the possibility of the failure to be there. But I think it's very much like there's two things there. Like the Army makes every school for you to pass because they need more of those people, right? So if you go there and you learn and you absorb the information and you're just a good dude on patrols, helping your ranger buddy out and staying awake and not eating when you're not supposed to and staying alert on security, you're going to do fine. And the second thing is, I think especially in the Army, we have this huge community of people who do something and then turn and look at others and say like, it's too hard. You shouldn't go do it. Like it's not for you. And I think like it's just a crippling mindset to get into because, hopefully everything that we do as leaders, we're willing to look to other people and say like, no, you can do that too. And, I'm going to bring you along. I'm going to show you how to get it done. And I'm going to, put you in a position where one day you can go to Victory Pond, you can, put your tab on your shoulder, and when you do, I'm going to be there, celebrating it every step of the way. And like I know right now, we're getting more and more. When I was in command, we got, more and more lieutenants coming without going through Ranger school and then coming into a platoon, which is fine. And they can still be outstanding leaders. But I told each and every one of them, like, hey, when you want to go back, I'm going to support you to go there. Go back and get your tab and get the experience in, and then it's not a like you're saying a monkey on your back that you've got to walk into the room and everyone's wondering like, hey man, what where's your EIB? Where's your Ranger tab? Uh, and all those things aren't everything. They definitely help the formation of a young leader. I think just gain the roots of the community and what it means. So you went through then as an sergeant or a staff sergeant?
Brandly, brand new promoted staff sergeant. So I had like just pinned probably 5, 6 months prior to that, and it's like once again the monkey in my back. The small unit tax because I help out a ton.
Yeah, yeah,
So
and
sorry.
that's all good.
No, go to living room now.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Nick is simultaneously parenting, so he's got we like most of us in the army. We've got a job and then we've got a real job, which is at home with the kids. So no worries.
You want to sit with daddy and be quiet?
There we go. Give the people what they want.
1 second. I'm so sorry.
That's all good.
This would be easy to manage with her. Not on the phone. Okay. No, please go to living room.
All good.
He's 3.5 now, kind of getting that little attitude phase. He's
Oh
out of the
yeah.
way. Sorry about
Yeah. No, no worries at all, man. Yeah, they hop back in. They need
that.
love too, dude. So
Yeah,
no
that's
no
true.
worries at all. So you graduated, you're a staff sergeant. So then I'm assuming you get picked up pretty quickly on orders for RTB after graduation.
So that's what I was kind of hoping for. So they had done this transition before. You used to only have to be on station for 2 years, and while I was at JBLM, they had switched that to 3 years because as soon as I graduated Ranger School, because at that point it was probably about a year and a half at JBLM, and I was trying to set up the orders for TB. Um, I was like, I want to go be an RI. This is awesome at Ranger School. This is something I like want to get more involved with. So I was hitting up the branch manager, trying to work there with Ranger Branch, and it was like, yeah, they changed this to 3 years. So I was kind of like, damn, I really have to wait till that third year here. So I was kind of like working with the formation, like how can I help out with sending people to Ranger School, stuff like that. What else was I doing? That's when I went to Audie Murphy board too. It's like
Hmm.
one of those other monkeys on my back where it's like, hey, this is something really challenging. I'm not that great at boards, so let's go ahead and try this out. So I was end up being able to get my medallion for that.
Nice.
Yeah, once that third year came up in 21, very cool, baby. Please go to the living room. once that third year came up at JBLM, I was finally able to go over to fourth RTB. I don't really know how they do the manning because like sometimes it's like, oh, like staff sergeants with squad leader KD time only, and they're not looking at E7 go to fifth or sixth. But then I've seen like brand new staff sergeants go to fifth or sixth. Um, Obviously, like everybody, like I'm sure if you were kind of in the same shoes I was at the time, everybody wants to go to six RTB because of all the Florida beaches and everything like that.
Yeah.
That's obviously what I was praying for as well. Want to go really at the time was fourth. I was like, I don't want to go there. It's squad. It's Fort Benning. I wasn't really like fond of the idea. All in like hindsight on everything. I'm really glad I ended up going to Darby, especially with the transition that they made from squad to platoon while I was there, as I can just feel it now as a platoon sergeant again in Alaska, where it's like all this like doctrine and everything that we had to work through and build, and then teach the ranger students constantly for those 4 years. I'm able to kind of bring that to this formation now, where like I have like PFCs leading as team leaders and some of our little like missions that we're running. I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, for those of you joining us that don't know, the Ranger Train Brigade sits in Fort Benning, Georgia, where it's headquartered out of, but they're actually split between Dahlonega, Georgia, Fort Benning, Georgia, and then down in Destin, Florida. And that's where you get the idea of like there are generally three phases of Ranger. So you've got Rap Week, which is your buy, and then you've got Darby Mountains in Florida, and you rotate through those. So when Nick's talking about, wanting Florida, a lot of guys want Florida because it's Destin. You're close to the beach, great weather all the time. But there are North Georgia. My wife and I fell in love with North Georgia when we would go trip up there. Just the mountains are beautiful, the small towns are beautiful. It's its own little uh, quaint and very cool, rugged landscape. And then you've got, the home of the infantry, where it's, Fort Benning, Georgia, and that's where Fourth Ranger Training Battalion sits, and that's where Nick, you were for. Is it 4 years, 5 years? How long were you at RTB for?
I was there for 4 years total. So I got there July of 21, and then I just left there this past June. So I ended up spending 4 years there total.
Nice.
Normally with those broad in assignments, it's 3 years. I was trying to make some other career moves. They obviously didn't really end up working out. And then when I found out that I could actually end up on orders for JBR, I was like, I'll 100% take that. Um, Otherwise, I probably would have like left a year sooner.
Yeah.
I'm personally glad though I did end up staying those 4 years because it like enabled that chance for that fourth competition that probably normally wouldn't have been there.
Yeah, so you arrived there July 21. You've had your Ranger tab for 2.5 years at that point. When do you become aware of the Best Ranger competition?
So I remember like even watching the standings with you and Alistair Keys. When I was at Ranger School, I had like a buddy named Reed Silby. There's Jack Ryan, like all the 101st
Yeah.
guys, them as well.
Yep.
Um, so I went to Fort Benning. I was TDY at this court, that Army reconnaissance course. And I was like, oh, I got some friends doing the best ranger competition. Really knew nothing about it. And I was just like watching like some of the live streams, kind of checking in on the stand-ins. And it's like watching the videos, I was like, damn, this looks brutal. Like I will probably never do this. At least this looks super painful. My PL at the time was actually doing the competition as well. Or sorry, no, he did the competition in 2019. And like at the time, he was the fittest person I knew. And then they took like 32nd place. My buddy Davis. I was
Oh
like,
boy.
okay, if I'm the fittest person that I know right now
Yeah.
took 32nd place, like this is a absolutely grueling competition. So I'd heard about it then, and then as I was like on orders for RTB, I was like, maybe another goal that I can kind of set for myself is to like try out for the best ranger competition. And like, if I'm just in the best ranger competition, that'd be kind of like a cool thing to be able to experience. So that was kind of a goal I had set. Like when I got orders for RTB, like I'm going to go there, I'm going to try out for the best ranger competition, and then kind of see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I think, that's where, being in and around the competition now for a few years, we inside the community think highly of the competition and love the competition. And I think it's very much like an explanation of Ranger culture in 3 days. If you come down to Fort Benning and watch it, you can glean a lot about the culture, and what matters to Rangers. Um, But as you get away from the ranger community too, uh, people just don't know about it, right? They just don't know about the competition. They don't know that
Yeah.
there's like this Super Bowl at Fort Benning going on. And, I remember the days when I was first growing up and they would play it on ESPN. And, I would just like see it on the TV and I was like, oh my goodness, this looks ridiculous. And the way the ESPN would hype it up of like no one has slept at all ever. And it's like, what do you mean? Like they're on day three? That doesn't even make sense. So, I think it's always interesting when guys like first figure out or hear about the competition or kind of stumble upon it. And then it's like, if you're a competitive person, once you stumble upon it, it's almost like it's this like addictive thing that very quickly, can become an obsession or a challenge in a community where everybody kind of wants to be challenged and wants to go take up the mantle and take up the fight and, prove, that they have something that the other people don't have. I think it becomes this almost like intoxicating feeling of like, hey, I want to be there. I want to try it. I want to do it. So that's super cool. So you get to fourth RTB, and then when do you first think about doing the 22 competition?
So I got there, let my chain of command right off the gate kind of know. I was like, hey, I intend on doing BRC this next year coming up. Because that was probably like the competition that just happened a few months prior. You and Alistair Keys I just won just recently. I was like, all right, these guys are like the gold standard right now. And like obviously we hear all like the lore with you guys are like, oh, fastest Derby Queen time ever with Alistair, and then hey, Vince Bykowski's the fastest guy in the army. I'm just like, these guys are absurd athletes. So I kind of hear all that lore. It's like, all right, I'm super bought in. I'm gonna start training now. So yeah, as soon as I got there, I was like, I have two goals for this next year. I was gonna attend jump master school, which I attended during the train up, which in hindsight that was terrible. And then uh, obviously doing the competition. They had the first tryouts too for us in that November. Um, I remember going into it too. I was like, yeah, that was pretty big at the time too. I was probably about 215, a lot of muscle mass, and I was like, all right, if I can just make one of the teams, this will be awesome. Yeah, I went out there. I actually like took second in the tryout. We had this other guy named Charles Kulikowski, like pretty like intense competitor too. He was going to do that 2020 competition before it got nixed.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know why he didn't do it in 21, but he was coming out at 22 where he's like, I'm going to do this competition. But he had taken first in the tryout. I took second in the tryout. And that's when it kind of like queued up to me. We were like, yeah, I kind of belong here. Like, this is something that I might actually be pretty well at.
Let's pull back. We're gonna pull back the curtain here for a second. What does an RTB tryout look like when they're first trying to establish those teams? What do they have you guys doing to set that stage?
So the first year, it was ran by Sergeant First Class McMasters, I think it was, at Brigade. Essentially, what we did was we showed up in our Ranger PTs and we did an RPA. So, like the push ups are scored in its own event, sit ups are scored in its own event, 5 mile run its own event. And then after that, what was the second event we did? I think it might have been Malvesti, if I remember correctly. I can't believe I don't remember that. Pretty sure the second event we did Malvesti, we hit that, and then we finished with a 12-mile ruck. He was just six out to Arkham DZ, Arkman DZ. Um, Obviously, like when you post your times for that, they're not very sexy times. But if you actually like rock down the route, you'd be like, "This is the worst 12-miler I've ever done." It's just gravel, rolling hills the whole way. I don't know if you ever ran
Oh
out,
yeah.
out that way, like straight out. Yeah, it's absolutely brutal. So
Yeah.
that was kind of our tryout with all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always interesting how different units do it. I was just out at 4ID. 4ID runs a pretty cool like 2-day best ranger on post competition, and they ran ranges, stress events. They tried to model it as closely as they could to the competition with an unknown distance ruck march. And you're trying to then pair guys together off that. Uh, and to hear it, I mean, what it sounds largely is like RTB just kept it simple. They're like, hey, let's just kind of grade the base fitness components and the rest we'll worry about on the back end and kind of grade there. So were you then how did that work after tryouts and kind of prepping for the competition? You guys are still walking lanes during that time and teaching stud, and obviously you're going to jump master. So you've got a pretty full plate on top of training at the same time. Do I have that right?
Yeah, so it was different year to year. 22, I really didn't get cut out for like full-time training until like late February.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
I hope people that were my chain of command to listen to this, but I was like getting annoyed. It was like late February, and I'm like, dude, everybody at fifth and sixth is off work. Like I'm out here walking this class right now. So I was a little bitter at the time. That training was kind of like getting a little weird with that. I think realistically, though, I think it kind of makes you tougher though, because like those long nights and everything like that on top of training, that's kind of
Right.
what you experience in the competition. So like obviously, like my mind and body might not be prime, but I don't know. I felt like it helped out from a resilience standpoint. In 23, they cut me off the schedule a lot more. I think it was like mid-February. I was working like a kind of condensed schedule, or like, hey, you're going to only work certain events, which helped out a ton. 24 from January on, they're like, hey, dude, see you. Go win BRC. We don't need you to work at all. And then 25, like I decided super late. I didn't decide till like January 15th, I think, that I was going to do the comp.
Oh wow.
I told him, I was like, hey, with me deciding to do it this late, I'm not going to ask for really any time off work. So I was like, I'm just going to do training around like the work schedule. So I was like, I can do the tech assist. I can work these events so I can help out at work as well as training for the competition. Because I mean, you also think about it too with like certain kind of skills or shooting. It's like that's so like ingrained in you already. Like I don't really need to take time to do LAN av out in AO Darby just because I've done like the practice LAN av courses all these years. Like poncho wraps, everything else like that was already pretty ingrained with me. And I was like, I don't need this extra time off to train for this
Yeah,
stuff.
so you kind of came full circle, in 4 years of like, yeah, I think guys that are new to the competition, it's overwhelming because when you hear about all the things you have to learn on top of training, you're like, there's no way I'm going to, learn mortars. I'm going to learn long gun. I'm going to learn my machine guns. I'm going to learn how to disassemble, reassemble everything. I'm going to learn, HF radios. I'm going to learn. And all that stuff just takes time to coordinate and put together and get your hands on and learn and try to find a subject matter expert that will come in and teach you, like, how am I actually supposed to do this thing? And so it's very overwhelming, like the first time you approach the competition of like, this seems like a never-ending list. And it's kind of built that way, is
Yeah.
it's a never-ending list. But it sounds like then, like you're saying, you get confident with, those things and then they kind of come back. It becomes like riding a bicycle. And I think the competition is very powerful in that of like, hey, we're just reinforcing basic soldier skills in the competition. Basic soldier skills under a lot
Yeah.
of duress and a lot of pain. But let's just get really good at those basic soldier skills, and then once you master them, you can kind of dust them back off from time to time. So, in 2022, who was your partner, and how did that competition kind of go for you?
So we had like kind of similar to the regiment concept where you have like mini comps throughout, and then you have that final mini comp. Like this is who you're going to be paired with based on what you're good at. So I got paired with this guy named Joshua Van Horn. I remember when I first got paired with him, I was like, damn, this guy is 37 years old. The biggest things I liked about him though is like it's like, hey, BRC is not all physical. Like you look at all these guys' run times and stuff on Strava. Like that's not what the comp's about. Like, yeah, obviously it helps being physically fit. He's like, you need to be good on the ranges and you need to be good on the skills. And he like kind of really ingrained that in me because he had done it the year prior and he had done it against you. And I think they were in like 36th, 37th place. And he kind of took those lessons learned. He's like, let's focus on these skills in shooting because that's something that we can get better than everybody else at any day of the week versus like there's going to be obviously a physical disparity with like his age and how big I was at the time.
Yeah.
And like that was like my favorite thing about him was like the integrity and like the focus and continuing to try to make better par times where it's like, all right, this is the new standard for weapons box or whatever else we're doing.
Yeah.
And just kind of doing the right things, coordinating things. And that kind of like created the framework for how I did my train ups in 23, 24, and 25.
Yeah.
But yeah, that year, the thing that's kind of sucked the most was right before the night ruck march. We were on the Derby Queen, and like I had jumped off his leg, and his leg buckled weird, and he kind of like collapsed in pain. And we ended up finishing up the Derby Queen. We did all the obstacles clean. He could barely run. It was like a weird like walk, trot, jog, and I'm like, dude, we're about to do like an 18 to 20 mile ruck march. Like, how are we gonna do this? So we just kind of had to work through it together. It's like we didn't put in all this work for us to just like be hurt. So it's like, all right, let's take some weight out of your rock. Let's put it into mine. Let's kind of this game plan. We're like, hey, we just need to like maintain ourselves. Like we're not trying to win the ruck. We just have to do like pretty good. We have to pace ourselves. And that's when I realized that a lot of people like out of the gate, they just go out at this like full run in sprint. And yeah, you might be in like a really good standing, like around mile 9 or 10, but this isn't a 12-mile road march.
Yep.
And we could walk pretty fast. When we were doing our training rucks, like we'd walk at like a 13:30 pace. I did not realize until that point how useful it was where it's like mile 14, mile 15, we're just walking past teams. And I'm like, dude,
Yes.
like, holy cow, we're going to do pretty good at this. And like, yeah, with all that, like issues with that stuff, ended up taking 11th on that ruck march, which is, like, that was like, the coolest thing for me where I was like, damn, we were able to overcome this
Yeah.
and make it out here to night stakes. And like, we crushed night stakes. I think we won 2 out of 3 of the events. So like, initially in the day one standings, we just did not have a great day one, but over time it was like, all right, like did good on the Derby because we did it clean. I didn't realize people are like taking penalties and stuff on it. Did okay on the ruck, won two out of 3 of the night lanes, and then all of a sudden we were in like 10th place going into day two, and I'm like, oh shit, like we're actually like a competitive team now.
Yeah. 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 There's two things, uh, you know, that I just heard you say that really brought a few things home for me. One, when you talk about like skills work, and getting really good at that stuff. And you talk about the weapons box. For those of you that don't know, the weapons box is typically four disassembled weapons inside a box. Typically, it's going to be your 240, your 249, your M4, and your pistol. Sometimes they'll put in a shotgun in there. They'll mix it up, weapon type a little bit. But the goal is to assemble those weapons with your partner as fast as possible in a typical year. Um, and when you first do it with your partner, it may take you guys 6, 8 minutes to get all these small pieces out of the box and figure out who's holding what and who's already assembled something. And then as you iterate and you build a process with your partner and you start to build, techniques and functions, you start really learning that like, oh, a competitive time's not 8 minutes. Like if I want to win the weapons box at the competition, me and my partner have to be under a minute out of the box, and then under a minute with nods on out of the box. But that stuff takes like constantly returning to the box and trying it. And it becomes like this, like, I don't want to go do this thing anymore. Like I really don't want to spend any more time here. Is it worth it? But it's that commitment when you talk about like you can do this for a few years and then like dust these things off and come back to them. Like that's the level of commitment that, I think too, we just need like in the company coughs more of like, hey, Soldier has free times and they're just sitting there, crushing some rains and some, some tornadoes from the from the PX. Hey man, go put together a weapons box, and see how fast you and the boys can rip it and then get better and better and better and better at it. Because at least then we're learning a skill, right? And we're learning a process and we're building some team cohesion. So that's very powerful. And then two, man, I'm a believer in the walking. I think too many guys go to that competition thinking, "Hey, I'm going to run this whole thing," and like, hey, if you're getting ready for the competition or if you've done it in the past, you ain't running the whole thing. You're going to be walking, and so you may as well get very, very good at walking and with your ruck on, with your kit on, and get ready to kind of fly. So you and Van Horn finish eighth in 2022. Is that right? I got that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up finishing 8th place. We actually had made it down to 5th place at one point. It just kind of sucked with day three, where it's like, all right, these are a lot of physical things where we need to be able to run for them. And I was like, we're gonna finish where we finished because I know a lot of people that like are outside of regiment. It's like the goal is you got to get top 16, and then it was kind of like, oh my god, we're like in the top 10, we're in the top 5 at one point.
Yeah.
So we were like over or we were exceeding the standard that we were gonna go into the comp with. Obviously, like yeah, you should go into the comp to win, but that was our goal that first year, top 16, end up in 8th place. We were really happy with that. Like I was actually just texting him earlier today too.
Yeah. No, dude, I like 16th, like just to finish the competition, we say all the time is just like such a remarkable accomplishment because you've got guys showing up from all over the army with the same goal and you are in that finishing coalition at the end of like guys that get the honor of going through day three, which for me is was always just like a celebration of the competition. And even when I watch it now, it's like wow, this is just like some fun stuff, especially when they like lay the queen on day three and they've got the CWSA going on day three. And, they've been doing some awesome ranges on day three recently. And then you got the buddy run, which is just like a celebration of, you finally get to cross the line and you're with your buddy and, you get to hoist your rifle up and finally say like, yeah, we did it. Like that is, I mean, it's just an awesome, awesome way. So like day three, I just look at it as a celebration, and there's not a ton of points left on the table on day three. So it's like, hey man, let's just go out, have some fun and enjoy it. Yeah. So
I
you
absolutely agree.
so you finish in 2022. There's one thing I wanted to bring up in 2022. There was a guy from RTB who he went viral.
Oh, Bob, I
Yeah,
already know
yeah.
what you're gonna say.
Yeah, he went
Yeah, Bob.
viral. Yeah,
He's
yeah.
he's actually up. He's actually up here right now in
Oh, dude.
Alaska.
We should have brought him out. We should have brought him out here today because and this is important for people to realize, like, there's a moment in which he went viral because there was an ammo can and there was something hidden in the ammo can, and you were supposed to basically go through like a Kim's game of sorts in order to open up the ammo can, and there's supposed to be a riddle involved. And he said, like, screw it. And he just took apart the ammo can, like old school style, and then, opened it up and took it out. And everyone's like, what? You can't just break the ammo can. And he's like, the rules didn't say I couldn't do that, you know? Uh, and I remember watching that, and I think for people outside of the competition, it's kind of hard to understand, but there's like a gameism portion of this competition. So how did you guys like approach that in 22? Were you guys already thinking of those gameisms in 22, or how did that kind of tie into your experience?
I didn't really even think about stuff like that ahead of time. Like there wasn't really any gameisms that we had. It's just like, hey, like this is the event. We're gonna try our best to do this. Like, how
Yeah.
fast can we get on this tourniquet or this arm wrapped up? Because like even for that event, like you had this like whole binder where you had to like go line by line. It's like, all right, this equals this letter. So like even with Bob doing that, I remember looking at the standings for that. I think they finished seventh on that event with him ripping the top off, and we finished in eighth place with me like running down the lines and then just like yelling off the letters really quick.
That's
It was
funny.
like funny. I was like, it didn't cut off a lot of time because they still had to go through and find it because I think the end result was that you had to point to the history section of the Ranger handbook. Like
Hmm.
that's what the little like cipher said.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you would have still had to like decipher the message anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because
But
for
like with that comp, there wasn't really like anything for us to game. Oh, sorry about that.
yeah, no, that's all good. I think, for people listening, they give you a competitor's handbook at before the competition. And that competitor's handbook has the task conditions and standards for every event. And largely it's pretty clear. Like there are things that are just like super cut and dry. Like Malvesti is pretty cut and dry. You're going to do all the obstacles and you're going to go through it. But there are other events where there is definitely room for interpretation of like, hey, the task conditions and standards don't say that I can't shoot that target at the same time as my partner shoots something else, So like if I can get this sequence faster, then I can make this range faster, and happen quicker. Uh, and as long as the rules don't say I can't do it, then you've got an argument to make of like, hey, me and my partner came up with a creative solution to this problem. And because we came up with this creative solution, we're able to accomplish this task faster, more efficiently, and get a better score. And I always think that's an interesting portion of the competition to watch teams and how they approach certain things. And then you see the teams that have thought about it too much. And because they've thought about it too much, their time is actually slower. So it becomes this game of like, hey, if you're going to go down that road, you better test it, or you better really think through like what are the ramifications of like how I'm trying to work through this problem. And it always makes, I think, the competition a little bit more exciting. So we finished in 22, we're eighth. When do you decide to do the 2023 competition?
Oh, day three, I was like, I am gonna do this 3 years in a row. I had already decided. I was like, I will win this competition. I will do it. I'm gonna do this competition until I win it.
That's
So like
awesome.
I immediately knew right after the comp, I'm like, I'm gonna take like a week to let my body recover, and then I'm gonna dig into running because like I just wasn't a great runner at the time. I think I ran like a 34-minute 5 mile. I was maybe like a 2:05 12-mile ruck time guy. And I
Yeah.
was like, I'm gonna fix all these physical deficiencies because I saw like the tier of the regiment guys are out there. I was like, these guys were absurd, superhuman athletes. Because like obviously you guys swept that entire top bracket, and I was like, that's the level I need to get to physically, and I need to be perfect at shooting and skill. So I knew right away that I wanted to do the competition in 2023.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, for people that don't know this, 75th Range Regiment in 2022 went 1, 2, 3, 4, I believe, or was it 1, 2, 3, 5? It was something obscene. It might have been
Yeah, because you had the two majors,
yeah.
Slamkowski and Blanchard. I think they took fourth place.
Okay, yeah, and they broke it up. So, I mean, like that year was I mean, it was remarkable to watch, but it was definitely like a oh boy, you know, oh boy, I better start training if I'm not in the 75th to come to this party because they're gonna bring their best and they're gonna bring their best every year and they're gonna come out and try to win this thing. So in 2020, you decide shortly after 2022 to go in 2023. What does kind of that prep look like between 22 and 23? How did you kind of set that up?
So I realized with like a lot of the ranges, I was like, hey, I'm like an okay shooter for 2022, like for an eighth place finish.
Hmm.
But the guys that won in 22 that I noticed, Ty Boyle and Corson, can't remember
Corson,
his
yep.
first name.
Josh.
They had won the marksmanship award. And I was like, that is probably something that's going to be tied into winning this competition. Like you need to win these like big time events. So I was like, it's going to obviously be a lot of marksmanship and then just like building a lot of speed under my legs because I already knew I was a pretty strong guy compared to the field. Um, and that was basically everything I had been working on from like late April until December when like the full train up starts like turning into wheels again this year. And then also kind of having that transparency with my chain of command where it's like, hey, I need a little bit more time to actually train up. And that's where they had cut me off the schedule a lot more in 23.
Yeah. Yeah, the competition being wildly three parts, that technical, tactical, and physical portion. One thing Luke and I had talked about is, the physical portion is only technically a third, but it's really half because everything has some sort of physical component to it, right? But the shooting is always interesting in the competition because none of the shooting I would describe as like wildly or it's not impossible, right? You never show up to a range at the best range of competition and you say, there's no way I'm going to hit that target. It's all the shooting is like very much within your wheelhouse of like as long as you have solid marksmanship fundamentals, you should be able to do these ranges. It's just a matter of like how fast can you do them and how fast can you do them on day two when you're fatigued and tired. And remember the course of fire. If you're doing like a three-gun lane and you're coming into a new course of fire again and you're trying to remember like, hey, am I supposed to shoot first or my partner shooting first? Uh, and so I think that's, ironing that just like the marksmanship out and probably getting more solid, I would assume under pistol, uh, helps a ton just across the rest of the competition because then that's one less thing you have to worry about on game day. Did you focus mostly on pistol or where did you put that time into marksmanship?
I know the same as you. Like we've always heard the term like, hey, pistol shooting will make you better at shooting every other weapon system. That's honestly what it came down to because most of these two gun, three gun, or just even like a single pistol stage, like that's where you're going to make or break your BRC experience. And I was just going out to East Alabama Gun Club, going out there shooting periodically just so that
Yeah.
I wasn't going to have any rust going into that next train up.
Yeah. Yeah. So then 2023, who's your partner? How does it go?
So in 23, so originally I was eyeing my buddy Jeff Sales to be my partner for that. We had kind of talked about it in the off season, and then he had some kind of other like career plans. Where he's like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna do the comp. And then this guy that I did not hear, I never knew about him until like 2 weeks before the competition. His name is Zachary Navarra. He was the ex over at Arslick, and somebody's like, hey, like Navarra runs ultra marathons. He's pretty physically fit. He went to North Georgia, so like he's pretty good at the climbing stuff. So I like kind of link in with him, and I'm like, hey, just trying to get to know him before the tryout because I was like, I'm gonna take the best person going in this next year. Just gonna
Yeah.
like poach him. We go do the tryout. This guy beats me on basically every single event. I don't think there's a. I think there might have been one event that I beat him on, and I was like, oh my god, this guy's an absolute animal. Because I met with him on that. I'd say like the only difference was like I'm a little bit more outgoing and he was like a little bit more like internal with everything. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, like he's gonna come out of his shell, which he ended up doing that over the comp, but kind of followed that same framework that I had with Van Horn the year prior in 22, where it's like, all right, like, hey Navarre, this is what Van Horn and I did to be successful. These are like some lessons learned from last year, and then approach that entire training up where it's just like, hey, these are lessons learned, kind of factoring in like the Bob factor where like, hey, we need to really like look into the task condition standards Is there like any way to kind of work around this to streamline things, or something kind of between the lines where we can cut off a couple of seconds and get ahead of the competition? So we kind of just navigated through that. I think we started our train up in January, did that until April.
Yeah, I think, the institutional knowledge portion of this is huge, right? And as units gain institutional knowledge and guys stick around from year to year and can pass along that institutional knowledge, it becomes an advantage to itself. When you talk about like why is the 75th Ranger Regiment so successful? Well, Nick O'Brien and their human performance, training center that they've got has been assisting and running that train up for years and years and years, and no one has more institutional knowledge about the competition right now than Nick O'Brien leading that train up, So like how do other units replicate that? Well, you take what you learned last year and you actually do what the Army tells you to do, and you do an AR, you capture your lessons learned and you pass them on to the next guy, so that they can be successful. So you guys go through that process. How does 23 work out for you guys?
Um, so I think I was a little overconfident going into that. It's like obviously people talked about Luke and Justin Rain. The guy doesn't produce lactic acid. Like I was
Yeah,
like, oh
yeah,
guys, it's kind of intimidating. And then kind of asking around, it's like, well, how are they compared to Vince Pikowski and Alistair Keys? And like, oh, like, they're a little bit slower. And like, oh, like, I'm not worried about them. Like, we'll be fine. We have our game plan. Like, we're gonna crush this opening event we take 19th place, and I'm like redlined, and I'm like, dude, I bit off more than I could chew. I was overconfident. We came out too fast, and it took like probably 3 events to get my feet back under me. Like it was like definitely like a punch in the mouth. So like halfway through day one, it's like I planned on winning this year, and now I'm in 23rd place going into some of the ranges.
yeah,
Um, yeah, like initially it wasn't too good, and then I was like, all right, like we just need to like take it one event at a time because obviously like over analyzing other events. They had some like stakes midday, so it's like, all right, like we did good on this stake, we did good on this stake, we did pretty good on this range, pretty good on this range. There's a weird debacle though with the ruck that year. So competitors got really bottlenecked throughout the day. And there's like a like 6 mile movement through the range complex to get to the ruck start point. And essentially what ended up happening was they had to like bump the start time for the ruck like 1 hour. And even with them bumping it 1 hour, we showed up 30 minutes before the ruck start. There was teams that showed up when the ruck had already started just because of
yeah.
how like bottleneck the events were. Because they're like, hey, if you took too long on these events and the day land have like the ruck has started, like pack your ruck up, get ready to go. For us though, like a team that was trying to win, it's just like, dude, we just jogged 6 miles basically to get up here, and now we have to throw on this rucksack and ruck in excess of 20 miles. And like the ruck was pretty heavy that year too.
Yeah, that's brutal. That I remember that happening that year, and I felt so bad for guys, that are coming in right at the wire, or even like after the ruck had left and been like, I mean, you could see it on their face, just like the level of fatigue. But I also think like I felt bad for them for a moment, and then it's like, no, that's the point of the competition. Like the pay to be a winner mindset early in the day will always pay off, and it will always pay off in our job too, of like, hey, I should try to get there as fast as possible, right? And there's nothing that's going to help me. The start of that competition, though, every year is wild. Watching guys go out, you'll see them start, and you're like, well, that's too fast. That's too fast for what you have for the next 3 days. And so I think it's always important to remember while each of these events are graded individually, you still have to have the mindset of like, where am I going over time, and how can I manage this effort? And again, in that, like the competition becomes a lesson about the Army of like, hey, I can't just burn out today. Whether that's at BRC or my JRTC rotation. I can't just decide on the first day that I'm just going to go all out and then leave nothing for, the remainder operations to come. You've got to pace your formation. You got to pace your buddies. You got to keep track of them and make sure they're doing okay, to get through. No, that's a brutal that was a brutal first day one, and they had the Queen at the end of day one that year. Was that the year they had the Queen at the end of day one, or was that
No,
uh
no, it was kind of a punch in the mouth because I remember doing that train up, and I was hitting the queen nonstop. I was like, we're gonna win the queen this year. Like this is awesome. And I find out in like early March, like, hey, no queen this year.
Oh,
So
okay.
in
Yeah, yeah.
22, right before the Ruck March, there was the Queen. 23, there was no Queen that year.
That's right. That's right. That's interesting. Interesting. So then how does the rest of the competition end up for you guys?
So the ranges helped out a ton, and like having stakes on day one instead of all on day two, that helped us all like immensely because like we were just racking up points through that. Night stakes was kind of like 50-50. I do think we had like one or two first place finishes. We won weapons box again that year. It was just like this, the sequence was there, and I'm like, let's just stick with this and just continue to improve off of it. Um, and then going into day two, like obviously at one point we were in like 23rd place, and then going into day two we were in fourth place. So I was like, all right, confidence is back. Like it's
Yeah.
time to break the 75th regiment. Like we're gonna break the scroll. We're gonna take these guys down.
Yeah. And how did that end up?
Oh, it did not end up good. I did not realize what Evelyn and Rain had in the tank because so they did like get that Metcon on day one. We are all doing it at the same time, and I remember like hitting the Echo bike and I'm like looking over at Evelyn and Rain. I'm like, those guys are going so much faster than me. I was like, they're skinnier than me and they're gonna crush me in this Metcon. I was like, you kind of go through that, and then there's like a javelin lane. We got like some dumb penalty on it for that, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of our fault. It was like a carrier under fire, or like a one where you like throw a tourniquet on, rig them up in a Skedco, and move them on a steed. It was just like a lot of like just dumb penalties or like things falling off. I was like, this is not going the way that we planned.
Yeah.
And you kind of just see us go from like fourth place, and like, all right, now we're in seventh place. It's like, all right, confidence comes back. Like these are my woods. Like we're gonna crush Night Land Nav. They put us all the way on like the west side of the land nav course, which is like where we don't walk ranger students at all. And I was like, yeah, I'm not familiar with this terrain at all. I got caught in like a bad group of thickets. So like we were moving at a snail's pace through the woods, just trying to like fight through the terrain. So I think we ended up taking like eighth place on Night Land Nav. And I was like, all right, that's kind of shot. So going to day three, I was just kind of like, all right, how close can we get to first place? Because when I remember like talking to somebody, they're like, yeah, Evelyn and Rain won that competition on the second day. Like nobody has any shot to take them down for that. So like day three was like, hey, we're just gonna go out with what we have in the tank, try our absolute best. I do remember that it's like, don't let me discredit anything. Navarra absolutely carried me physically through that competition. That guy was an absolute animal. I remember though during the buddy run, like he normally outpaces me on the runs. Like this particular incident, I was like, oh, I'm kind of like running faster than him right now, and his skin was like a weird like tone. I was like, I don't know what's going on with him. We find out after the competition, like we end up taking sixth place that year. We find out after the competition that he was like probably like a day away from having acute kidney failure, like
Wow.
almost had to go on dialysis and all this other stuff. So like he gutted it out through all of that and like never showed like any sign of wanting to slow down or quit or anything like that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, when
Oh
you're
yeah.
there, when you're there and you watch guys finish, you're like, yeah, a lot of those guys are like, yeah, they don't have a lot left. They like they are the competition has took them exactly where it should take them, and that's, exactly what they had. And it's here at the finish line, and you're watching guys and the look on their face of like elation of like, thank goodness that's over. On like day three, you're watching guys come up to the CWSA, like looking at the looks in guys' eyes, and you're like, yeah, that they're feeling it right now. So I mean that's
Oh
awesome.
yeah.
Props to that dude. That's awesome. So then we finished 23, and when do we decide to do 24? Is it the same thing as 22? Like next day you wake up, dust off the
Exactly.
boots, and you're like, dude, I'm
The plan.
ready.
Yeah, that was a plan. Like, because I'd been talking to Aaron Arturi because I knew he was going to six RTB. He had done the competition twice before, and I was like, hey, like you'll be at six RTB. This will be my last year that I can do it. This will be the last year you can do it. We'll both do it together here in 24. Like this will be an awesome competition to do together. We was kind of like tied in where it's like, hey, we're gonna be really good at skills. Like I'm gonna get us some range time. We'll be really good at all that stuff. We kind of had like a little training plan together. He gave me some like material to kind of like study up on like stuff that helped them out at the 101st, stuff that was going to help me out train on my own as well. So, and I tried to feed him some stuff too. Where I'm like, hey, you can probably work on some of this stuff as well, just that we're on the same page with everything. So he ends up going to 6 RTB, and then while this is going on too, I come in contact with John Flynn, who had been working with the MCO team. And it was kind of like cool where it's like, hey, like we are all in the same installation outside of Ranger Regiment. We run two separate train ups. And I was like, you have a lot of resourcing, but none of like the institutional knowledge. I have very little resourcing, but a ton of institutional knowledge. We can do a joint train up and see where that works, like how that works out. And then John Flynn had another guy on his staff named Chris Broussard who had competed, I think it was 3 times before, with his top finish at second place. He had worked at Army marksmanship unit, so like he was like our marksmanship coach for everything that year. So like when we could get artillery down for training and like some of the other RTB guys too, like this was probably our best resourced everything train up. And then like having John Flynn actually be able to like facilitate like an unbiased perspective of the mini comps and the endurance events and kind of simulating it the same way as Ranger Regiment, like I felt night and day different from like how I was going into 23, where there was like not a lot of humility, where I was like, oh yeah, like we crushed everybody else in our team that competes against us in our mini comps, versus this one where every mini comp was like an absolute dogfight going against the MCO guys, the RTB guys, because there's another really good RTB team that year too with Williams and Arroyo. Like I think they
Yeah.
finished fourth place that year after ACL.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like an absolutely phenomenal train up. Like if the rest of the army could adopt that type of train up, like you'd see a lot more competition with the 75th Ranger Regiment.
Yeah, John Flynn is an outstanding coach too. When you talk about a guy that has the knowledge of the endurance side of the house and how to get someone ready for an ultra, I mean, we saw it again last year with the MCO team of like, hey, he gets these guys and he gets them ready for the competition, and I think it's super cool to watch. And he came from, that 75th program, so he's also got that institutional knowledge of like, hey, I'm bringing all this stuff that I've learned of how this organization trains, and now I'm applying it. And I think, when we talk about like Abrams Charter and making the Army better, I mean, that's a great instance of how, we use the competition to then continue to spread, the training methodology that works. And if BRC is truly like a representation of what we want from soldiers, then what better way to get them ready than, continue to spread the knowledge of how to train for this thing, get ready for it, and you can take this all the way down to team levels at companies if you wanted to, and get them super ready to fight. So yeah, Aaron, everyone should know Aaron Arturi is also an animal. If you want a good look right now, like the dude's super fit right now. So when we talk about like, uh, you poaching an athlete to do this with, Aaron is, a phenomenal athlete. So I think, you found the right guy there. So walk us through kind of what happens in 2025, and walk us through like day one into day two when you're sitting in second place, and then give the people what they want. Just an overview of the chaos that ensues day two.
So going into 2024, I was like, hey, I had a lot of these like lessons learned, came out too fast in this opening event. And it was kind of like well known, like, hey, 24 is going to be the exact same competition as 2023. They're going to adjust some things. So I was like, we can just train for the 2023 competition. All these lessons learned, like these are things I wish I would have done differently. 2024 goes phenomenal where I'm like, hey, we're going to pace ourselves in the opening event because as soon as the sandbag ends up on everybody's back, the whole field's going to die. And then that's when we can hit the gas pedal. So, like, 23 finished in 19th place on the opening event, 24 with a ton of juice left in the tank. Like, all right, we finished in sixth place. It's like, all right, now we get over to Victory Pond. We outswim a lot of teams because it's like, all right, the breaststroke is the dominant technique. Well, at least that's what I discovered in the life vest.
Yeah.
Fly through the pond, like, all right, we're passing teams. Now we're in like third place out of like the whole like queuing of the pack. It's like, all right, let's crush Malvesti, fly through Malvesti. I think we had like a top three time on that. Like, awesome. And then what events do we have after that? Oh, we had the RPA 2.0. With that, I was just like, hey, like we could sit here and try and catch our breath, or we can get on that helicopter and get to the urban obstacle course. So I was
Yeah.
like, let's kind of do what like Vince and Alistair Keys did. I was like, let's get to that ruck hold as quick as possible because I do not want to get logged up in the back and have like limited time at the ruck hold. So kind of went out there like moderately fatigued with RPA 2.0. Don't think we finished great on that event. That was probably like one of our lower standings. I think we were like around like 12th or 14th on that. We were in like one of the first groups in the helicopter. With that, we kind of just like let a couple teams like go ahead of us. It's like, yeah, you go ahead because there was a day land nav, and I was like, it's the same one as last year. I have the route memorized to the woods. I was like, we'll pass them in the woods when they're doing day land nav. So kind of watching from the window, like, all right, this is the execution of the events out there, and then it's like kind of talk through our game plan. Like, all right, I'm going to go here. You're going to do this. And I remember people like watching us. They're like, dude, you guys flew through in half the time as everybody else. So they had like a little leaderboard at the end. And I remember we were like a minute faster than like all the previous regiment teams that had done it before us. And I was like, all right, dude, like this is coming together right now. Like this is what I envisioned for our BRC experience this year. Then once again, like Dayland Nav, there's like some stakes to the woods, but I was like, we don't even need a map. Like I have the woods memorized at this point. So I think we fly up to like second in the queue past all the teams that we led ahead of us. We did really good on all those day stakes going through the woods. I think they're like top two, top three finishes. We get out to the ranges. I think we had like a lot of like top 10 to top 15 finishes on the ranges. I can't remember exactly what the standings were for those, but it's like you're going to have some like missed targets and everything like that. And then we get to Ruckhold, second team there. It's so I don't think the Ruck started that year until 1900. We were at Ruckhold, I think, by 1300.
Nice. That's good. That's good news. That's good news. Yeah,
So I was
and
like,
that's where
like
it pays to be a winner comes in. You know, it's like you if you can get to Rockhold in the competition, you're banking time against other people, and they're still out there suffering. And now the Georgia heat is kicking up, and at 2 to 3 p.m., you don't want to be moving through it if you don't have to.
so yeah, get in there, like obviously staying out of the heat, like throwing down tons of water. I think we like threw down like 33% of our MRAs. It's like we need to be well fueled. Like this rock pays for a lot of stuff. We're gonna get more sleep tonight. You don't get caught in the night stakes queue. Like we need to get ahead of everything on this. Going to the rock march, like we felt phenomenal. I'd say for like a majority of the rock, we were like I think holding like third place. Towards the end, we started kind of burning out a little bit, so that's when I think we fell to, if I remember correctly, fourth or fifth place on that rock. And I'm like, it's not terrible. I was like, I don't mind slowing down on this. I was like, it's maybe 10 points per person that we're giving up by moving back. I was like, as long as we're fresh or stakes, because it was like a real advanced night stakes that year. I think they had like 5 or 6 events. Ended up paying out for us. Like we got there. There was none of like the weird stiff leg walking. Like just felt like we just finished doing like a little 10-mile run. Like we felt fresh. So like going into the javelin lane, like we weren't cramping up like some of the teams were. Weapons box, we still had a lot of dexterity for treating the casualty, a ton of dexterity. What else? What other events were there? There's like a night OP one. It was like super similar to the year prior. So like I just made sure that like we had pulled out every type of like optic possible. And it's like, hey, we need to be like super cued in on like setting up these optics and focusing them because that was kind of like an issue that Navarra and I had ran into in 23. It was like just learning from those experiences.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think there's many other events. There might have been one other one that I'm kind of slipping my mind on. But then it's like, all right, all that happens. We get back to Wet Hall because that's where we had been sleeping these all these years. And in Wet Hall, we get woken up in the morning. They're like, "Hey, you guys are in second place right now by 9 points. Regiment's in first place, and then there's like a 130 point gap between
Wow.
second place and third place." And I'm just like, "It's like, all right, dude." And I was like, "Day two is like our events that we're actually better at. Like we're really good at mortars. And I can't remember all the events on day two that year, but like mortars, everything else like that." And then like Nightland Ev is like a bulletproof plan where like we were setting up star courses out there, we were like covering AO Derby like in excess. So like if they drop us off at any point out there, that entire AO is covered where it's impossible for us to get caught up in anything. We like found any kind of like avenues of approach there was to get any kind of roads or intersections. So I was like bulletproof plan for day two. Like we're gonna take these guys down. So that day started. They had like a cognitive test, or like they had a bunch of questions on that, and I was like, this is actually kind of cool. Like I wish they had done this more in the past. Sure we did okay on the test. I can't remember exactly some of the questions. It was like the 307 composite or something like that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't remember. It was like Marauders and stuff like that. Then we go out to the stadium, like we're amped up. I'm like, I'm feeling a little nauseous. I'm nervous. So I threw up and stuff before we get out on the field. They announced us walking out, and it's like, all right, like we don't need to go that hard on this first event. I was like, it's just like a quick physical event. Like all our events after this are gonna be like all like the cognitive skill events that we're gonna go ahead and crush. I was like, let's just go ahead and pace ourselves through this. And then I remember like the little whatever they had to queue up the start time, like whenever that went off, I was like, oh dude, screw this. I was like, let's try and close the gap as much as possible with these guys. So I remember like throttling through, get to the first wall, jump over it. And then on the second wall, I remember I threw my sandbag over it. I climbed up on the wall And I remember when I was landing, I was like, oh, the sandbag's there. I don't want to land on that sandbag because I'm going to roll my ankle. So I kind of like moved my leg out to the side. And all of a sudden, there's this big popping sound on my knee. And I remember just like laying on the ground. I was like, oh my God, that hurts so much. I have no clue what that was. My knee's so sore right now. I can feel like all through like the back of my knee and through my hamstring. And then I remember like getting up, kind of like stretching it out. I was like, oh, this is probably like a rolled ankle, but on my knee. I was like, this is really sore. And then I was like, this is probably going to hurt for probably about 10 minutes and I'll feel a little bit better. Like, I'm just going to go over to this tire and just gut this out until it starts feeling better. I remember getting over to the tire, trying to lift it, and there's just like immense pressure in my knee. And then it just started kind of going downhill inside my head. I'm like, oh, dude, did I like tear something inside my knee? Like, is this a huge issue? And I was like, I put in so much work this last off season with Aaron. I was like, there's no way that I'm going to quit during this. And I was like, all right, let's just get under this tire. Let's slip through this. Let's see how far I can get. Like, I just need to get off of this event and then we can figure out something with my knee. We can probably try and wrap it with something. We'll be good to go. So start flipping the tire. I was like extremely painful too. It was like all on one leg, like all back, just trying to get this tire up. And then I remember trying to get on top of the tire. So I didn't realize this. So I almost tore my MCL as well. So I tore my ACL when I hit the ground. My MCL was like stretched out like taffy, and that's where all the pain was coming from. So when I tried to stand on the tire, it was just like there's no stability in my knee. And then yeah, I remember just falling to the ground. And I was like, I've not been in this type of pain in like a long time. And that's when I kind of knew I was like, dude, this is our last year. This is like I let Archery down, I let myself down, like my wife through these last 3 years. It's just like, hey babe, I gotta go run 20 miles. Like I'll be back later today, or like I have this mini comp, I'm gonna be gone all day today. It's like my wife, my child, I was like, I let everybody down. Like my brigade wanted me to win this competition, and I let all those guys down too. And it's just like so much pain, like just knowing all that stuff. I remember just breaking down and crying on the field. It wasn't even like pain, it was just that like emotional stress of that. Um, like just even being picked up and getting kind of loaded in the back of the FLA. It was like Arturi was there. You could just see like the sad look on his face. Navarre had came out from 23. He was out there watching. You could see like the sad look on his face. Van Horn from 22. Like all three of my BRC partners, including that current year, like they're all there watching. And I was like, dude, I wish this could have been like a happy ending for us, but like just, the competition's over here right now. Like it's like nothing we can do about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was there that year and I remember you coming off the wall and when I watched you fall and you start hobbling towards the tire, I was like something I mean you could see it right there that something wasn't right. And then when you saw the manner in which you lift the tire, it was like, no, he's in a world of pain because I think you flipped it one time. And the manner in which you
I
lifted it
flipped it. I flipped it like 4 or 5 times.
4 or 5 times. The manner in which you lifted it, like you were saying, was
Yeah.
all back. It was just like, oh, dude, he is not using his legs right now. He is like, I mean, whatever happened, it must have been serious. And I just remember thinking, like, I mean, maybe he gets through this event, but I mean, I don't know how you do night land nav, on an injury like that if you can't put any weight on it. Like, I don't know how you do the next event after this if you can't put any weight on it. So, I mean, I was super sad for you immediately. And knowing, coming to the comp and being aware of the guys that are competing, hey, this guy was here in 22, this guy's here in 23, he's back in 24. This means something to him. He's hungry for it. He's got the partner. They're putting together a good weekend. And then to see it hurt was, I mean, it was devastating, I think, for everybody to watch. And I remember like when Aaron came out to you, like he just kind of picked you up, carried you off, like, helped you hobble off the field. And like it's like I think it was also a super cool moment. And like, your Ranger buddy at that moment was just with you, and with you for the rest of the weekend. It looked like, and when I saw you guys hobbling around it, like you guys were out at like Super Supper and you guys came out to like the finish line, even though like you didn't have to come to the finish line because obviously that's like an emotional spot to be. But it's like, dude, these guys get it. And like, they're still Ranger buddies and they were Ranger buddies yesterday and they're Ranger buddies today. They're still Ranger buddies today. And, they're here doing the right thing. So, I mean, it was I think a very sad moment to see, but also like uh, a cool moment in that like I in that moment, what everybody should know is that there was a rule that you could only compete 3 times, and that was your third time, right? And immediately what started, I'm not even sure. I mean, you're probably aware of this, is like this conversation of like give Nick Whitney one more time, right? Like he got robbed on his ACL. Give him one more time. And like I remember being around on Sunday at the end of the competition, and I was talking to someone from RTB, I think one of the threes, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll have to amend that rule next year and see if we can get, Nick out one more time." But walk us through. So we got an ACL tear. You go, I'm assuming for surgery after that ACL tear.
Yeah, so like something that was funny with that too was 1 month from then, I had a SF selection date.
Oh
I
boy.
was just like yeah, I was like this is out. So yeah, I called that recruiter. I was like, yeah, ACL is done. I'm gonna have to figure out my career here in a second because I'm on orders for Fort Bliss at the time. Um, but Colonel Hammonds had like kind of reassured me. He's just like, hey, anything that you need, like I can help out with. John Flynn and Chris Broussard, like all the guys that on the MCO side, it's like, hey, any resources that you need, any kind of like doctor stuff, we can help out. I had some guys like around our unit too. Like if you need any help with anything, like after surgery, we got you. Like take some time off work, just get your knee straight, kind of figure out what's going on with your career. Yeah, everybody like kind of like really delivered on everything. Like even like Colonel Van Afro being able to help out with everything, getting me like a pretty quick MRI. Like I see some of my soldiers, like one of them right now has been waiting like a month and a half for an MRI. I got an MRI within a week on my
Yeah.
knee.
Yeah.
Um, they even getting surgery, like I think I was getting under the needle in like 3 weeks after the injury actually happened. So it was like a really quick turnaround to be able to get the surgery. Um,
Nice.
and like this is where I kind of like realized too, where it's like, hey, it's really what you want to put into the rehab process. So yeah, the knee had happened. Obviously, there's gonna be like a lot of atrophy. We kind of like hung up in the bed. My wife had been teasing me too. She's like, if they gave you another chance for another year, would you do it? And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I'm over it. I'm done with this. I was like, ACL is done. I was like, I'm over it. I'm never doing this competition again. People always kind of tease me about that, like, oh, you'll do it again. I was like, whatever. So with the rehab, I was like, I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna treat this knee rehab like BRC. Like I'm going to lock in on it, learn as much about the ACL, learn about the scar tissue, do everything I can to get this knee better. So I remember like, hey, I can walk around in crutches now. It's like just walking back and forth in my living room on the crutches, doing the exercise to work in the range of motion. Once the incision healed, like working the scar tissue down. And then like the rehab facility is like, hey, you're good to bike. I'm like, I can bike. Awesome. We're gonna put in a couple hundred miles like every single week. So like just go ahead ramping that up. I was like, I'm gonna get on the bike as much as possible. And then they're like, oh, like you kind of loaded on the elliptical. Like, awesome. I'm gonna sign out an elliptical from work and throw that in my garage and hit the elliptical constantly because it's like the closest thing to running without running. It's like
Yeah.
ripping the elliptical nonstop in the garage, hours at a time. And then I mean, I didn't tell my doctor until they actually cleared me. So you're not really supposed to be cleared to run after an ACL surgery until 4 months after, 10 weeks after my surgery. It wasn't like impressive times or anything, but it's just like, all right, like, hey, I just ran a mile at a 12-minute mile. Like we're getting a lot of like results with a lot of the stuff that we've been doing. I obviously have to take in mind like the ACL is not actually set, so I need to be like extremely careful with what I'm doing. Like a lot of this stuff is going to be restricted to the treadmill. But then I was like, hey, I'm just taking it 1 week at a time, like a very slow periodization on this, kind of like how we kind of treat our run programming. And then, yeah, it was like 4 months and like a week after surgery. So Arturi, Silby, like Reed Silby, and Matt Rush, the year prior in September, we had done an ultra marathon, one of those relay ones,
Hmm.
and it was coming up, and like they kind of joked, like, "Hey Nick, are you out on this ultra marathon?" I think they had asked me like a month or two after my surgery, and I was like, "No, dude, I'm in. Like, I will be ready for that ultra marathon this year." And I remember that as the day was approaching, I was like, "Damn, I really got to deliver in this ultra marathon." Like, I've been kind of like talking it up a little bit, like I was gonna be good to go. And they're just like, "Hey, man, like if you need to bow out or anything, we're not gonna hold it against you." Yeah, ultra marathon came up, and I was like, "Let's go ahead and do this." It was brutal physically, just because I feel like when you're trained for something and doing it, it's a lot easier versus like I guess I wasn't like as physically trained this time for the ultra marathon, but like I finished all 38 of the miles, and I was like, hey, this is a huge win. 4 months in to be able to do this ultra marathon. Um, yeah, at this point though, like still had zero intention of doing BRC, but I was like, hey, I'm gonna give back to ARTV. I'm gonna coach up the teams and stuff this year because like we had some like good results too that we seen the previous year where it's like we had a Roy and Williams finish in fourth place. I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is kind of like validation for myself where like, hey, like as I'm teaching these techniques and stuff like that and any kind of physical programming, like it's paying off with these guys. Like you kind of see like the MCU guys with some success. So I was like, this year I'll just come out, I'll help out John Flynn and Chris Broussard on like the institutional side of like skills and like BRC game planning and help out. And I remember it was like early January, or it was like late December. I got orders for J Bear. I was like, okay, like I'm leaving in June for J Bear. Like I'm still going to coach these guys up. Like this would be my last little hurrah. And I was out on a walk with Ranger students. It was like it had been like January 15th or 16th, something like that. And I remember just sitting out there, and my buddy Austin, he had just done the tryout, and he's just like, "Hey man, like they removed that 3 year old. You got one more BRC in you." And I was like, "You know what? Like fuck it, let's do this shit one more time." I was like, I don't know how this is gonna go. Like, let's try this one more time. Um, I was like, I'm gonna make sure like it's okay with my wife and like my coworkers and everything like that, because like that'd be kind of a dick move to just be like cold turkey, like, hey, you're not gonna see me on the schedules anymore. Hey babe, I'm not gonna be around
Yeah.
at home again because I'm gonna be training and stuff like that. So I went and talked to everybody. Then like, yeah, we would love for you to do this again. Like this would be like a good like little redemption story. It's like hopefully you can get your body back to like a that level to be able to train up with this. And then yeah, like once again, I was like, I know most of the skills. Like I'm pretty good at shooting where I'm at right now. So I don't have to go like obsessive and stuff on the weekends. And then physically, like I'm gonna get to where I can get to for all this stuff. Like we'll figure that out physically in the competition. And then yeah, once again, absolute masterclass by like Chris Broussard and John Flynn with facilitating mini comps, just working everything. Like they even Chris ended up working out something where we were able to shoot at strong point every
Wow.
single week. I think we are getting like 10 to 15 hours of range time every single week. So like going into the competition in 2025 versus 2024, I was like night and day better at shooting. I was like, hey, this is gonna be this galvanizing trait for Austin and I to have success in this competition. And then I mean, obviously it goes back to like, hey, you go into the competition to win, but like me and Austin were like late train up, didn't really have intentions to compete until January. Like let's hope for like a top 10 finish. Like I think this is something that's feasible. But yeah, we ended up going through that entire train up and stuff together and like ended up coming out to the comp.
Yeah. It is when I look back on that time, obviously, every January I start poking around Strava to see who's training up for the competition and just see, what guys are doing. And it was super cool to see the bricks start to get laid in like January, February, because like, I mean, most guys that prep for the competition, you see the same style of workouts, start popping up. You see the same sort of progression, some run, ruck, run. If you are on Strava and you see a guy run, ruck, run between the months of January and March, you better start clicking around and thinking like, hey, what are they? They're probably prepping for BRC, especially if you click on it and they're doing it with someone else. You're like, okay, and I
Oh
remember
yeah,
being
there's
so
this other guy.
yeah, I remember being so impressed. I think, like a month out, you did like a 6-6-6, like 6 mile run, 6 mile ruck, 6 mile run. And I remember looking at the paces and being like, oh, he's back. He's probably faster than he's ever been, based on these numbers. And he looks, poised and ready to go compete again, which I think, for a lot of reasons was just so cool to see because so often in the army in life, guys get these major injury and it becomes like this excuse of why like my back's bad. You hear like the guy, my back's bad. Oh, I have bad knees. Like I've got, a bad ankle. It's like, here's a guy with ACL reconstruction. I've had ankle reconstruction in 2020. It's like, if you allow it to be an excuse, it'll be an excuse or it can be a driver, and it can be something you wake up the next day and you get motivated to be like, oh, I'm cleared to bike. You shouldn't have told me that because I'm gonna go sit on my bike a ton now. Like, oh, I'm cleared for the elliptical. I'm gonna go sign out, and that's wild, dude. Sign out an elliptical from work, take it home to the garage, and I'm gonna start training on it. Like that is, just taking care of yourself and getting back in the fight. And to see those blocks start stacking in January, February, March, if you're prepping for the competition this year and you want to go, take a look, go take a look at, Nick Whitney's prep from from January into March, April, and you'll start seeing like the blocks required to get there. And I also think it's so cool, like, some guys prepping for the competition, they'll try to hide what they're doing or they'll go, silent on social media. It's like, dude, why? Like, it's so cool. The coolest part about this is the process, right? And then showing other people the process and being like, if you just start stacking small bricks like this consistently, the fitness you can amass in a year, even after an ACL reconstruction, is just ridiculous. So 25 happens, and how does that roll?
Dude, they completely flipped BRC over. It's like a new competition,
Yeah.
never been like this before. It's like you have Colonel Lee and Sergeant Major Hartong. They're like, hey, like this is no longer going to be a fastest Ranger competition because 23 and 24, if you had speed, you were making it in the top 10. And it's like 25 is not going to be the fast Ranger competition. You will have to be good at every single event. So there's like, I think there's 4 categories. There's a physical one, a cognitive one where they're asking you questions at every single event. There's a like tactical one, which I think shooting fell under, and some of the shoot houses. And then there was a skills one. I can't remember what they phrased it as, but it was basically broken down into those 4 categories. And all 4 of those categories were 25%. And I know they had mystery events. I can't remember how they did the percentages with those, but I guess those were worth like a ton of points where like if you didn't go to this mystery event, you lost out on a lot of points for that. So generally with BRC, obviously like you're tracking, it's kind of like streamlined where it's like you're going to go to this event, this event, this event, this event, and every competitor is going to work through the sequential manner. This year, they're like, hey, this is a choose your own adventure. As soon as like the opening events are done with, we'll make an initial cut down to 40 teams so that we can cut the guys out that we're just not ready for the competition. Those mass start events are all going to be lumped into one single event. So like that's great that you're fast. You only got points for this one single event for being fast. Now choose your own adventure. So like if you want to go to Prusik climb first, that's where you can go. If you want to go to the strongman event, you can go there. You can go to the furthest range possible and work your way back in. Like it is honestly up to you. And I had to like we were racking our brain like, hey, what's the best way to navigate this? Where do we think other competitors are going to go for this so we can avoid the bottlenecks in the individual ranges? That was the biggest thing we were working through. The awesome thing with this too, so like basically the exact same opening event. Like obviously, like you kept in mind that all 3 of the events were combined together. I told Austin, I was like, hey, like me and Arturi did this last year. Um, we went kind of like zone 2. We stepped in the gas pedal. We picked up the sandbag. I was like, believe me that if we stay zone 2 this entire first event, we will come off the sandbag like top 12. I think that's where we ended up. So like we started off and he's like, hey man, I just want to let you know that we're like 5th from last place right now in this opening event as we're running on one of the roads. I was like, hey man, you're gonna have a lot of trust for me right now because I just know how the field looks. I was like, give us 10 minutes. You're in the oh shoot. Can you pause for 1 second? I need to grab a laptop charger. My bad.
Yep.
You just start up again.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so let's kind of rewind back. So yeah, we start off this event and we're basically like 5th from last. And he's like, hey man, I just want to let you know we're like 5th from last place right now. Like, I think we should run faster. And I was like, trust me, dude, just stay zone 2, give it about 10 minutes, see where we're at 10 minutes from now. Like, you'll see what the field looks like. Like, everybody comes out a little bit harder and like they're just not ready for this event itself. So, like, 10 minutes later, all of a sudden you see like the whole field just starts to slow down. It's like we're still chilling right now, and you see these guys all redlined flying past everybody and pick up the sandbag. And I was like, hey, as soon as we get the sandbag, there's going to be like an overcoming feeling where you want to just pick up and start running down these teams. stay zone two. Like we're chilling. We're just going to talk to each other, pass this thing off every like 30 seconds or a minute, however we wanted to break that up. I think our plan with it was like any flat terrain, it was 1 minute. Downhill, you just carried the sandbag straight down the hill because it's like all momentum. And then uphill was every 30 seconds so that you're constantly rotating the sandbag over, not getting fatigued. Yeah, with that, like just chill aspect, finish the first event, or not even first event, but like the first part of the three parts of the first event, 12th place. It's like, all right, we feel good. Let's
Yeah.
go ahead and go hit the new RPA, EPFA modified thing, run down over there. And it's like, we'll keep it zone two. Everybody's going to come out too hot for this. Come off of that. And it's like, all right, we're in, I think it was 10th place or something like that at the time. And then we come over to run swim run. And it's like, all right, let's pick up the pace on this. Let's run down those like last bit of teams, kind of get ahead of the curve. Cause then when we come after the mass start event, it'll set the conditions for us to be ahead of the queue. And we can basically choose whatever event we wanted. And I think we ended up finishing the mass start events in like, it's like 7th or 8th place, maybe it was 9th place. It was
Nice.
somewhere up there, and like it had felt like we hadn't even started working out yet. And I was this is going way better than we had expected initially.
That's awesome. That's
Um,
awesome.
so then yeah, once again, it was a choose your own adventure. They had events all over, like probably within like a 6 mile radius. There's events in every single direction. So it was like you had to be really concise on your kind of your game plan on going at where it's like, hey, like, is this one worth going over here? Am I going to get a lot of points out of this because I finished good? Are the teams going to finish this event? Because like, if some teams don't go to that event, like I'm getting those points that they're not getting.
Yep.
So what we started off with was we were kind of front of the pack. It's like, hey, let's go hit this bench squat deadlift event because we are two dudes that are like, I think I was 205 at the time. He's like 215. So I was like, this is an easy win for us. Like, even if the entire field comes to this, nobody's going to be able to bench squat deadlift more than us. So go out there and hit it really quick. I felt bad for him too because he had some kind of weird stomach bug from drinking the Victory Pond water. So I'm kind of like half dragging him and he's like vomiting all over Hourglass Road. I'm like, dude, I am so sorry right now, but like we have to get to curling because this is always going to be like one of the most backed up events. We get down to curling. So I think we were the third team there because obviously some teams got ahead of us over there. I think the turn for teams on curling was like 15 to 20 minute turns. So I
Wow.
was like, it sucks that we're here third right now, but like imagine if we were here like seventh or eighth right now.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting there, did all right on curling, and then just kind of like worked through all the events. Now, something that was interesting. So Brigade is like always super locked tight. Like they always think like, oh, do the RTV guys know all the mystery events? No, I even tried. I was like, dude, what are the mystery events? Nobody would tell us, had no clue what any of the mystery events were. Um, as we were moving over to the Clark Simulation Center, we're just like, dude, this is probably a not Call for Fire. It was a Bradley simulator. We're just like, do
Hmm.
they have Bradley simulators in there? They're probably trying to level the field with like that or some other kind of vehicle, like one of the tables of gunnery. So we get in there. One of the kind of questions for that too is like vehicle ID, and I was like, yeah, this is definitely like a Bradley simulator. So they take you in the room, kind of like run you down and like on like how you actually operate the machine. I was like, hey, have you been on one of these before? And he's like, yeah, dude, I was at, I think it was 3rd Infantry Division. So he had been on Bradley's before.
Oh boy.
Dude, this guy looked ridiculous on this. He just crushed it. I just kind of sat. He needed me to switch to HE or coax. Like I was just flipping this thing for him, and I was like, dude, you got everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, he shot like over a nine because it's out of 1,000. He shot like a 900 on that. It was like at that point, I was like, I think we're gonna have a really good year this year. Like did solid on all the range and stuff like that too. There's like tons and tons of ranges. The cognitive events, I'd say in total in the competition, which there's probably 40 to 50 events. I'd say we only missed probably 4 cognitive questions total. It was
Hmm.
just kind of like, oh, that one kind of stumped us. But like every time you get one of those cognitive questions right, like once again, that's 25% of the puzzle. So like you're just racking up all these points. Like I know we placed first overall in the cognitive stuff because like when it came to like knowing there's like going to be some kind of cognitive aspect, I was like, they could ask us anything. I was like, it's best to know every single thing in the Ranger handbook.
Yeah.
Like we knew
Yeah.
it front to back, any possible thing, commas and periods in the creed, anything in the history. We knew everything. Dug through the demolition section, the climbing, the mountaineering section, like dug through every possible thing in there. That helped us out a ton with a lot of those events. we didn't really know how we were doing day one because it was kind of weird where it's like, hey, these are just the scores as of 1200, but like if you hadn't hit a lot of events, you're gonna have like a low standing. So like we were kind of clueless where we were at in the standings. We finished that day with Malvesti. Feet were getting a little bit torn up because like just a lot less volume on my feet during that train up because I was like, hey, we're gonna have to go work capacity because I'm still a little bit beat up. And then he was nursing this Achilles tendon issue the entire train up as well. Got to Malvesti though. I think we had the second fastest time. Uh, Kevin Moore and Griff Hawkinson, those guys were absurd on that. I was like, oh yeah, nobody's gonna beat our time, and then they absolutely destroyed our time. And then they did the ruck different that year. That kind of threw me off. So when I heard about the execution of like how the ruck was going to be done with that long haul carry, I was like, yeah, this isn't going to be bad at all. Like 2 hours tops. Like we're going to beat everybody at this because we're like bigger and stronger than everybody else. We'll just like grip the fuck out of these water cans and just carry them as best as possible. That was a pretty humbling portion of the competition. So essentially, what we did was did a 5 mile ruck, and then you got two set of water cans. So like you had a set of water cans, and your partner had a set of water cans, and, and all you had to do was carry it to the unknown finish, which was projected to be about a mile away. It's like, yeah, it'd probably be like 8 turnarounds. Like we'll be good to go. 2 hours tops. I remember like looking at my watch 4 hours later, like we still weren't even close to the end. And I was like, dude, this is like I was suffering, like because you're just running past the same lights over and over and over
Over,
again.
yeah.
I remember they said that one team I think covered 18 miles during that event. So like
Wow.
you can subtract 5 from the ruck. So they covered 13 miles doing that 1 mile water can carry just from back and forth on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was brutal. We ended up finishing 11th on that, which I was like, whatever, like it's fine. And
Yeah.
then yeah, night stakes once again they turned up the volume on that. There's a lot of cognitive stuff. They had like stuff with maps like resection, intersection. Um, they had this like virtual simulator shooting simulation that you like went through one of the buildings and they had like targets up on these goggles that you could see that you engage. It was definitely like a whole different experience. But yeah, we finished all that stuff out, got back to Wet and Hall, and then yeah, woke up the next day. I was like, all right, hopefully we're top 10 after all this stuff. Wake up that morning, like, you guys are in second place right now. I was like, dog, are you kidding me? I was like, how? This is awesome.
Deja vu, yeah. Yeah. A repeat of
Oh
24
yeah,
at that point.
dude. Well, because that's the thing too. So starting in 25, they had like an opening metcon. My knees are pretty sore, and I was like, I don't know if this is sore, if this is ACL pain, and there's some stuff you had to do with like a D ball with burpees. Wasn't worried about that. Like 100-pound D ball wasn't too heavy, and then you had a yoke carry. It was like a down and back. The portion I was worried about was these rope climbs where you had to come up, and you and your partner each had to climb this rope up and down 10 times a piece. And I remember like you're doing it in plate carry, and I remember like just thinking like, hey, if I like take a bad spill off this rope, I could tear my ACL again.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I remember during competitors week, I was like, hey, if they can't climb the rope, like what's the penalty for that? And they're like, well, it's 5 minutes. I was like, 5 minutes. And I was like, so so basically that how it mathed out was you and your partner had to do, I think it was 20 rope climbs, and the pacing for that to make the penalties worth it was you and your partner, like I climb it for 30 seconds, he climbs it for 30 seconds until you accumulate all 20. If at any point you can't complete all 10 of the climbs, it's 5 minute penalty. And I was like, there's no possible way on day two that we will even outpace the penalty. Or I don't know if the phrasing is
Yeah.
right. I was like,
Yeah.
dude, just bottom line up front, it was like, let's not climb the ropes. And he's like, dude, are you kidding me? And I was like, we're not climbing the ropes. I know I sound absolutely crazy right now. And there's teams that are going to just be like, what the hell are these guys doing? I was like, trust me, when you see the standings for this event, it's going to be like a smart deal that we didn't climb the ropes. It's like, we run up to the ropes after doing all that stuff. And I tag him like, dude, just go. Like, let's hit the flip sked. And then we'll bring this guy up in the sked, come and be done with it. He's like, are you sure? And I was like, just trust me. We finished that. And then I remember, so like we obviously do the rest of the events and we're a little bit more fresh for the rest of these events. I remember talking to Mike Rose because his little brother Paul Rose did the same thing, and he's like, "You guys are idiots. That was a terrible idea." And like, kind of like fast forwarding a little bit, we look at the standings at the end. So basically, anybody that tried to do the rope climbs, they end up having a really bad event standing on that because
Yeah,
it took them longer than
five
whatever amount of
minutes.
time it
Yep.
was. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it took them way longer than that. So I was like, that was kind of like going back to the Bob with the box. Where it's like,
Yep.
yeah, they said this. I was like kind of reading between the lines. I was like, this is kind of like a smart move.
Yeah. I mean, that's where you gotta
There's something. Sorry,
that's where you gotta be awake
you
during
go
the
ahead.
competition. We had, at the end we had like a sprint ACFT one year. And at the end there were chin-ups, and the chin-ups were the tiebreaker. If it was like an obstacle course, a mini obstacle course into this sprint ACFT, and they're like chin-ups will be the tiebreaker. And so I did no chin-ups and Al did no chin-ups. And we're walking away and they're like, why didn't you guys even try to do the chin-ups? And it's like, well, because this is a 25-minute long event. And in competitor, we asked you what you're grading down to, and you said the tenth of a second. So at very worst, we'll lose a place, maybe, right? But the likelihood of there being more than a 3 or 4 way tie, and then chin-ups are going to break it up is very low. So we'll just take, whatever our standing is right now. But that's where like you've got to pay attention because there are little nuggets like that where like, dude, I wouldn't have climbed the rope. I would have done what you did is like smack the rope, keep running, take my 5 minute penalty, and soldier on. But I think that's where the competition is, you know, a a cool uh a cool aspect of like the military of like, hey, you're playing to win, right? And like if it's not disallowed, then by nature it's allowed. And you gotta think your way through those problem sets. So how'd the rest of day two wrap up?
So very interesting events. Like I've done three BRCs before this. And I'm like, I've seen just about everything. Like I'm ready for anything that we're about to do. So after we finish all like the day two events in the stadium, we get on a helicopter, takes us out to Camp Darby, and I'm like, we're gonna go out to do Nightland Ave. Like I'm expecting this. We get there, and they're like, all right, you have another event over here. This is the second Brigade Mystery event. And I was like, dog, there is more than one Brigade Mystery event. This is something else. So how it went was you and your partner were handcuffed. So I had like little like cop handcuffs on, and then, or he had the cop handcuffs on, and you had like the little plastic flex cuffs on. What you had to do was pick both the locks, and then you had to take this like equipment over, and you had to boil an egg. You had 550 cord, the flint, a water bottle, and a knife to make a fire, and then put this egg inside of this water bottle and boil it. That was definitely us just trying to be as creative as possible. I was like, dude, how are we gonna pick all this stuff and break out of it? Um, I remember they were telling us too, like so what we ended up doing was we took the 550 cord, we put it on my thumb, and then we like contorted my whole hand down so it could slide out of the flex cuff. They told us at the end of the comp what we were supposed to do with the 550 cord was seesaw it back and forth and cut through the plastic, and that's how we are supposed to get out. And I was like, that would have been a way less painful way, but I mean, it might have taken longer.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, you got out of that stuff, boiled the egg, and I remember like one team like dropping their egg and it was just straight yolk, and I was like, I don't care how long we have to boil this thing. We're gonna overboil the shit out of it because if it's not a hard boiled egg, then you take an L on this Brigade Mystery event. So like, I'm like we'll stand here for 10 minutes. I don't care. I think we're gonna boil this egg for 10 minutes. We'll be good to go. Um, so that happened how it happened. Um, so I think we did pretty good on that Brigade Mystery event, and then we went into Wet Hall, and I was like, same stereotypical night land nav. Can't walk in the roads or anything like that. Explain the penalties the same. Like I've been kind of used to it before. Um, yeah, it was the night land nav. I don't know. So I took a bad azimuth on one of the things. It only set us back probably like 10 minutes. I don't know what was with the field that year though. Everybody was flying through the woods though. So like we were at like borderline jogging pace doing like across land nav, and we had to like navigate Halls Creek a lot, which like I could use an excuse, but I think we still like only took sixth place on it. Whereas like some teams were getting four. One team got all 5 points from group, and I was like, I just don't know what we could have done differently other than run faster. So like I don't know. I think you kind of see the evolution of competitors where they're getting better and better and better at land nav because I'd heard in previous years where like I was joking with Arturi. I remember when they did it in 22, I think they said they got like straight up just lost out there. And that's kind of what I expected out of like the competitor pool. But this year, like people were just on it out in those woods.
Yeah, I think that's two framed. It's one, people are getting fitter, right? They're figuring out how to train for this thing, so there's more fitness available on day two. And two, like, if you want to do well in the competition, you got to spend some time at Benning. You got to find an excuse to go down to Benning and map some of these things out and get familiar again. Like, I had never realized as a Ranger student that, how Camp Rogers and Camp Darby connect to each other until one day John Flynn made us
Yeah.
walk from Camp Rogers to Camp Darby to understand, hey, how do these two things link together? And that's a powerful thing once you start getting the mental map of, hey, now I can come up on an intersection in the middle of, the train area in Fort Benning and I know where I am. And so I can make adjustments off there and, find myself on the map. And the re section becomes a little bit easier to do because I just have that mental map going on. So I think it's twofold. Guys are getting fitter and guys are starting to cue in on like, hey, I've got to go down there for some time, whether that's for the whole train up or for 2 weeks or a week. And then when I'm down there, I have to maximize the amount of, training space and training time that I have to see as much of Fort Benning as I can so that, competitors week when they're like, hey, you're doing the Malone ranges. You're like, I know where the Malone ranges are. Uh, Not a problem. I know where I'm at over there. Good to go. So that's pretty interesting. So you roll out a night land nav in like sixth. And so you've placed pretty well in all the events. And I think that's like an important, like when you talked about like 23, 24, 25. I think guys think like to win, you've got to win everything, and you don't. You have to kind of not mess up anything, right? You've got to be a top 5 to 10 team in every single event that you're going to show up at, and win some, especially some of those that are more important than others. And so like just the consistency of like, hey, I'm uh, good at all these little things, but not an expert or not like, winning all of these things is what's expected of a team that's just going to do well year to year. And I think that's where Al and I always came up with the idea of, hey, we're going to leave every event and act as if we just won it. Even if we didn't win it, we're going to just act like we won it because at the end of the day, it's one event, and like the other teams are going to watch us and be like, how did they win that thing? And it's like, we didn't, we didn't win that thing, but we're
It's
going to
gonna mess
tell,
with them though.
we're going to tell everybody we won it. We're going to act like we won it. And then, it's going to maintain our morale as a team of like, hey, things are going well, and like, we're going to now move on to the next thing. And if things aren't going well, who cares? The next one's going to go well because, we're still in the fight together. So how's day three roll then? And tell us about the finishing stretch.
Oh yeah. So I remember getting up on day three. So I didn't sleep that well going into day two that year. I think I was just anxious about that opening event. But like day three, it's like, hey, this is just kind of like we were talking before, where it's like this is the celebration of BRC. I think the only things that were like on my mind was like, hey, we probably aren't winning the competition this year. Like we've solidified ourselves in second place. We see the regiment teams in third and fourth place. So like they're eating up closer and closer to us. So like as soon as I wake up, like the biggest thing I tell Rod is like we can just have zero mistakes today. I was like we have to be like good enough about halfway through the pack and all the finishes. Like these third and fourth place teams, they look a lot fresher than us. I was like we have to just play to maintain second place because we're gonna hate ourselves if we fall to third or fourth place just because we have some big issues. So like going to the Derby Queen alone, I remember watching Griffin Kevin come off. They flew through that 16 minutes, and I was like, I couldn't even do that if I was fresh. And I remember going onto it with Rutledge, and I was like, hey, we're gonna do like a walk trot through this entire thing. I was like, the biggest thing that's gonna put us in like the top six of this event is zero penalties. I was like, everyone's grip is going to be absolutely fried from that day one. I was like, we have to get through the Tarzan without being fatigued. So that was like the biggest pushing point. I was like, after we hit the Tarzan, we push down the gas pedal a little bit and then try to climb the standings a little bit. So it's just kind of like playing for that lead ahead, zero penalties. So Derby Queen went pretty good. I think we finished in like 18 and a half, 19 minutes on that. I was like, it's not terrible. Pontchartrain was just kind of like one of those like second nature things, like, hey, you just rig it up as fast as you can. Something that I didn't really like this year was how they were casting because they cast one team and then they cast the second team, so it was like uneven cast. Our cast was absolutely terrible. We were so far from the landing dock, and I was like, this is going to be one of those events that we're taking kind of a huge L on. I think we finished like 13th place on that cast out of 16 teams, and I was like, we're gonna have to pick it up in some of these other events to kind of even this out. You come out of the water, you got to run around, you got to paddle a boat, and then get ready for CWSA. The one thing that's awesome with CWSA though is like I've had access to this year round for the past 4 years. Like obviously there's that like slight fear of the log when you get up there where you like pop out of the cage and you kind of look left and right and it's like, dude, I'm kind of up here. This is kind of freaky. And
Yeah.
some people will kind of like pussyfoot their way across the log. I remember just like flying up the ladder. There's a specific need to climb up the ladder to get up there a little bit faster. And I remember just like popping out of the cage into like a dead sprint towards the platform. And I was like, hey, like I need to be going balls to the walls right now so we can maintain the second place. And we got through that pretty quick as well. I think we ended up finishing, might have been second or third place on CWSA. And then we get up in the upper area at Victory Pond. Lo and behold, Brigade Mystery Event number three. Not only two Brigade Mystery Events this year, Mystery Event number three. This one, I don't even know how I would describe it to you. It was like when your dad was trying to play a joke on you and he put like 15 boxes inside of each other. It's like, all right, like got the combination. Like we're gonna find out what's in this box, and it's like, all right, it's another box. And you work through it. The end state though was like three pictures. There was like a Ranger tab. There was a like thing of whey protein, and then I think something said like lead the way or something like that. And like I remember like looking at him, and I looked up at the grader. I was like, Rangers lead the way. And he's like, that's it, time. I was like, so we did all right on that event. Uh, Another funny thing too was so like the cognitive event tied with that event, the cognitive question tied with that event. It's kind of clutch that I went to jump master school and everything like that. Like it kind of tied back into that 2022 BRC. So what the question was what are the jump commands
Oh
that
boy.
like you give during PWAC?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, awesome, dude. Like 10 minutes, get ready.
Yeah.
We ended up getting that. There's some guys that are coming up there and like, what the hell? It's not a requirement to be a jump master for this competition. Like, it's not fair. I was
Yeah.
like, dude, it sucks to suck.
That's, I mean, yeah, that's one of those tough things of like not everyone's airborne qualified in the competition. And so for sure not everyone's, been to JM, but again, it's one of those things that like it should be an expectation of the community, right? So it's one of those things that, although some guys are not going to get it, it's, an homage to all the rangers that have come before us and the community that it's built on and the airborne rangers, that have come before us. So I think it's super cool that they include stuff like that. And hey, keeps you on your toes of what else can we be learning, that ties back to this organization.
So right after that event finishes, we have a lot of downtime because like we're one of the first teams up there. And all I can think is like, all right, all we have left is this final buddy run. I have no clue where we're at in the standings because at this point though, like Brigade was completely shut off. They're not letting anybody know where any of the standings or the point totals are. So like that's kept close. And I'm just like, dude, I don't know where we need to finish out in this buddy run. Like, do we need to finish top 10? Could we lame duck it, take 16th place? Because at this point, like my feet were completely like just looked like hamburger meat. They were torn up at the bottom. I was losing like feeling in my calves. My calves were retaining a lot of blood. I mean, it kind of goes back to just not having a lot of volume in your train up, where it's just like in
Yeah.
hindsight, I wish I had a little bit more. And I remember the gun goes off for the buddy run. And yeah, we start running, and I'm like, oh my God, dude, I can barely move faster than a 12-minute mile right now with this rifle in my hand. And this final buddy run was a 4.1 mile run, I think it was this year, which like in the past 3 years that I had done the competition, the final buddy run was like a 5K straight downhill to the
To
NIM.
the
So I was like,
yeah.
this is definitely something different. There's a lot of elevation. We're out in the direct sun. Like this is painful. I remember about like a mile and a half in, I was like, dude, I'm so sorry. Like I just I can't move my legs any faster. Like they're just not working. Like I am giving like 100% effort right now. I just don't have anything in me right now. And we are probably sitting about 14th in the standings for the final buddy run. I'm like, this isn't good if this is like something that we need to have right now. And I remember thinking, I was like, dude, how do you feel right now? And he's like, dude, I'm chilling right now. I was like, I just thought of a really good idea. And they never said we can't do this. take my rifle and run with both the rifles, and I can run faster because of that. So we go from like I think 14th in the standings, like all the way to like eighth place or ninth place in the standings, running
Yeah.
through that. Obviously, like before the final stretch, I was like, dude, I got to take the
Give me my
rifle back.
rifle
Like we
back.
have
Yeah.
enough of a lead on the team behind it. Yeah, I was like, we can't look like a wimp as I'm coming across the finish line. So yeah, I remember taking that back, and I remember like just running down and like I just know everybody there, and just like you see all your friends, you see your family, everybody that had been there for you the past few years, you just see them there. And I remember just choking up as I was coming up on the finish line, and I remember like hitting the finish line. I was like borderline heat catting. I remember just kind of half collapsing over. Colonel Lindsay like picked me up and scooped me and threw me in the table, and I just like broke down crying. Where I was just like, dude, 1 year ago I would have never imagined that I was crossing this finish line, like potentially taking second place at BRC. I was like, I
Yeah.
can't believe I made it back here. Like it was just so much emotion. And then like coming out of the trough or whatever, I remember seeing like Arturi, and I was like, dude, I still felt bad at this point. I was like, this could have been us last year too, like possibly in first place, like seeing how things would have played out. I remember just like embracing him with a hug too. And I was bawling my eyes out at the finish line. It was just so much emotion that had built up over the last year.
Yeah, man. That's incredible. That's an incredible way to finish it. I mean, when you talk about, 4 years and the commitment to the competition and, the refinement and then disaster striking and coming back and working through it and then like coming back to the competition and giving more, and then like too, I think so often in the competition, guys forget to check their ego. And it's like, hey, if we can do this faster and I can help you, it's better for us, right? And you see that all the time in the army of like, hey, no, I want to carry all this stuff in my rucksack. And it's like, I understand that. And that's a beautiful thing. However, we can move faster if we cross load. We can move faster as a unit if like we spread the wealth, if we move our heavy stuff to our guys that can move faster and we, lighten the packs of the guys that are struggling behind us, we become a better organization. And, for you to be at the end of 4 years and be like, I'm still willing to check my ego and hey man, if you take my rifle, we can work through this better. I think is a huge testament to who you are as a competitor and who you are as a ranger and a person. And I think that's pretty cool. But man, I can imagine 4 years of the competition to come across that line, the emotion that you would had would be pretty immense. As we wrap up here, I've got two big questions, that I want to pose you. And the first one is, we've got 4 years of experience here on the table. And if you could, let's say like three traits that you could have in a ranger buddy that you're going to take to the competition or you're going to take to combat, what are those three traits that you're looking for in somebody?
Oh, that's a good one. It's kind of hard to answer on the spot. So obviously, it's just kind of like that, like discipline to like, hey, I'm always going to follow the program. I'm always going to study this stuff on my own because like you never want to find out where it's like, hey, I've been putting in all this work here, and then you come back on the other side and find out they haven't done any of that. So definitely like that, taking that discipline. Let's call it discipline in general as a trait. Um, let's say humility. So a lot of people kind of climb up in there with ego. It's like, hey, I'm better than everybody else. They kind of puff their chest out at others week, and it's like there's zero room for this ego. Like I got my ego checked in 23. I remember going to that comp like I'm gonna smoke this comp. We're gonna have it 1 in 2 days. That's just a terrible trait to have. So kind of having humility with that. And then yeah, third trait, obviously, you just need to be an alien. It's like, hey, like when it comes to this competition, like either you have it or you don't. You could be the nicest person in the world, smartest guy ever, but if you're not an alien, like physically, like extremely physically fit, you're probably not going to be that successful.
Yeah. Yeah, last week Luke and I talked about grit and experience. I think humility is a huge one out there, and I think you see guys get too down on themselves too early in the competition. And it's a long competition, and it's a long grind, and it's like, hey man, everyone that's at the line when it starts, thinks, hopefully thinks that they have a shot at winning, right? If you're showing up there, hopefully you come with the idea like, hey dude, we're fit and we're ready for this thing. Um, and then you see the level at which some of these guys do some of these things like Malvesti and scream through it. And you're like, dude, I didn't even know you could move on an obstacle that way. That's how I always felt when I watched Al go through obstacles. I was like, dude, I don't even know when I watched Al do the Queen in like 13 minutes, and I was like, dude, I feel like I'm a pretty fit guy. Can't even come close to a 13-minute Queen. Like, I don't know how you even manipulated yourself through the Queen like that. Like, that's insane.
I learned how to do the queen. I learned how to do the queen because they posted that video of him and Rich Froning. And what I did was I'd watch back everything that Al did. I was like, this is how he did this obstacle. This is how he did this obstacle. That's how I had learned to do all the obstacles for the Derby Queen. I was like, this free game footage right here. Like I can figure out all this stuff.
Right.
Like I don't really care about Rich Froning, but I was like,
That's
Al's
right.
the guy for the Derby Queen.
Well, 100%. There's some backstory on when he took Froning out to the Queen. Originally, they were supposed to race each other. And Froning saw how
Yeah.
fast Al goes through these obstacles, and he's like, "Hey man, how about we just do this thing together?" And it's like, yeah, like if you want a clinic on how to do an obstacle, if you want to see the Weaver in under 20 seconds, go call Al, and he'll show you how to get through the Weaver in under 20 seconds. It's a clinic, right? But it's bringing that experience to bear, bringing the humility to say like, "Hey, Al, I need your help right now. Like, I know I'm supposed to be the faster partner, but I am falling behind right now, and I need you to keep the pressure on to force me to run between these obstacles to, keep the pressure on the other teams." And and then when it comes time to do something I'm good at, like I'm gonna take some weight out of your rucksack, I'm gonna put it in my rucksack, and we're gonna move, and I'll take that burden at that time. So I think that's a super powerful one that you knocked out of the park there. And then the second question before we wrap, you know, a lot can be said about the competition and what it gives to the Army, but what have you gained from the competition, and like what does it mean to you, and how does that kind of, make the Army better as a whole?
And just like so much has just come from these last 4 years. You kind of think about just kind of growing in this community. I mean, it kind of goes back to like, it's even like on a professional side of things, like these 10 level tasks where it's just like, I am so good at just a bunch of random stuff. Like if you need me to breach this door, guess what? I learned how to do that at BRC, build a poncho raft, set up a ruck a certain way, build run programming, dietitian stuff, learned all that. I can teach any kind of PMI for all these different weapon systems. I know all these different knots that I can tie extremely fast. I can beat all my Joes at reassembly on different weapon systems. Like you just learn all these crazy traits. Like that's one thing that you get out of it. The community out of it is awesome too, because I could just feel it from year to year to year. Like I was just meeting more and more people, and it's just amazing to be able to kind of like share that with everybody else. We can kind of like talk about stuff like that's tied into comp. We're like, hey man, like you see this guy doing this comp, like, or what'd you think about this event? Like everybody else who cares about BRC, like they like all that stuff. What else do we like out of it?
I think
I think it's just the experience about it.
one of the things you just mentioned, I want to say it was in 24, Luke, Evelyn, and I went to one of the like sponsor dinners after, and they made a point that year to bring out a lot of like the past winners. And hearing what's super cool, I think, about the Army, what's super cool about Ranger School is like you hear a story from 2002, and it seems like it's a story from 2025. You hear a story from old Rangers in the 90s. I know it was harder back then, right? I will give them that. But you hear their stories and you're like, hold up, I can trace this to an experience that I had too. And it's like that shared experience is so powerful in the community. And like I am still very young in the community, and I looking back and hearing those stories can feel like the same level of like excitement about being a ranger that like I felt on the day at Victory Pond when I hear those guys talk about it, or when they talk about the night road march. I can feel the pain of the night road march again, right? And it's that like shared suffering through generations of people that I think really brings the community together nicely. And when you come down to the competition, you meet, random guy walking by, and you think like, oh, who is this guy? And he's like, oh, I won the competition in 1992. And you're like, oh wow, that's
Talking about Blaine
awesome.
Reeves.
Like tell me more about it. He's like, well, that year, the night road march was 28 miles, and it wasn't supposed to be, but they had to adjust the course. And so like, and you're like, oh my God, did you just say 28 miles? Like that would be an emotional event. Like that is crazy. He's like, I remember talking to one guy. He's like, yeah, the year we did the road march, it was so hard that it just cut the competition down to 17 teams by the end of the road march. And you're like, oh my goodness, like what happened? Like that's terrifying. So it's a super cool community to be around, and that it's just, it's timeless. You can hear those stories, you can relate it, and you can feel it, and it excites you for, 20 years from now when you're talking to Rangers, that are at the competition in 2041, and you're like, yeah, I'm the old duck, from 21.
Yeah.
Uh, and the competition is much different, but still so much the same, in that it's asking a lot from Rangers and asking them to go further, faster, and fight harder for their country, which is pretty cool. But Nick, I'll give you the last word. But before we was sign off here, I just want to thank everybody for coming here, for listening to Nick's story, and hope that, yeah, obviously as we move towards this next competition in 2026, there's someone that's going to start the competition for the first time. There's someone that's going to go back for the second time or the third time, but I think what's super cool is like you stack those bricks, and it does, experience in the competition does a lot, and it brings a lot to our community, and it brings a lot to our soldiers. So I'll give you the last word before we sign out.
Appreciate the time with you and everything like this. Appreciate you setting this up. It's like nice to actually like sit down and it's like once again I've like modeled a lot of stuff off your train out, so I'd actually be able to, like sit down and talk with you for a minute. It's been like really nice. Appreciate everybody that I've met along the way. Like it's a huge journey. Appreciate the sacrifices that my family had with all this. It's a lot of time away from home. Appreciate my four BRC partners with Van Horn, Navarra, Arturi, Rutledge. Like great experiences. Appreciate all the sacrifice from my coworkers because I'm not at work. They're obviously having to cover my schedule hours. It's just appreciate everybody.
That's awesome, man. Well, we'll sign off here, but I appreciate everybody's time, and as always, Rangers lead the way.